Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. Summary of Wednesday, July 30th's episode of The Young and the Restless. Says that spectators will witness this distraught mother go into denial as Amy Lewis yells that Damian Kane is still alive. Let's discuss what will happen on the CBS soap opera as Victor Newman will also threaten Kane Ashby. Victoria Newman and Claire Newman discuss rescheduling Cole Howard's memorial service at Crimson Lights, and Adam Newman and Chelsea Lawson will understand. Chelsea will take Claire to the park and sit with her after noticing that she's thinking about a lot of things. As they grow closer, Claire will be able to talk about her loss and receive some advice from Chelsea. Victoria, meantime, will relate to Adam as well and question how he developed such empathy. Adam will attribute that to Connor Newman and Chelsea. Adam will also reassure Victoria of his commitment to his family and imply that they can identify Kane's real goal and address the threat whether they cooperate or not. Victor will irritate Kane on the nice train because of all the deaths and damage that occurred on his land. Victor will brand him a young punk and a sleazeball while delivering some warnings, while Kane will pretend that all he can do is go on. Before admitting that Kane's attitude has previously gotten him into trouble, Victor will believe that it will do so again. Victor will argue that no one wants Kane in Genoa City after some discussion regarding his real estate purchases there. Kane will imply that things don't have to be this way, but he will make it plain that Victor will get a fight if he desires one. Victor will contend that he is Kane's worst nightmare and urge him to avoid both his family and Genoa City. Adam will discuss Claire's difficulties and Victoria's reaction to his emotional development with Chelsea once he returns to GC. Chelsea will mention that Kyle Abbott will return shortly to help Claire, but Adam will say that since Victor will never allow their relationship to endure, they have no future together. Victor will then phone Adam on Wednesday's YNR episode to inform him that, after Nick Newman is discharged from the hospital, they will be taking a plane back from Nice. Victor will insist on having a war now that Kane has proclaimed one. Victoria and Claire will talk about Chelsea's support and Adam's attempt to get in touch once they go home. Even though Adam was obviously uncomfortable, Claire would persuade Victoria that it was endearing. The lovely day and the results of her treatment will make Amy happy in the park. Nate will finally confess that Damian died and that he won't be returning home from Nice, but Amy will sense that something is worrying him. Amy will claim that is untrue and believe that, as the next of kin, she should have received notification first. According to Nate, Lily Winters believed Amy should hear it directly from someone who could personally check on her. Amy will pretend that Lily's phone call must have been a ruse, but Nate will insist that Damian passed away. Amy will be appalled by Damian's murder due to his new relationship with Lily after Nate gives her the best explanation possible. Amy will be held accountable since if she had simply left Damian alone, he would never have met Lily. Nate will be certain that Damian relished their time together and won't believe Damian would want Amy to blame herself. Nate will urge that they weep together and hold on to Amy's memories while she sobs about it not being enough. Amy will say that she wants her son instead of memories after yelling that she doesn't want memories. Amy will revert to her denial and pretend that she could sense Damian's death. When Nate finally cradles a sobbing Amy in a consoling embrace, he will appear distressed. According to spoilers for The Young and the Restless, Amy will struggle to process Nate's heartbreaking news. Follow along for more on how she handles it. Amy stood motionless, her eyes wide with astonishment and bewilderment, her hands shaking violently as she tried to take in what had just been said, and the tension in the room was evident. She briefly wondered whether she had misheard or if her mind was deceiving her because the air around her felt heavy and oppressive, like the walls were closing in. However, the man in front of her's icy, unblinking eyes reaffirmed the terrible reality: Damian was still alive. Her knees bowed slightly as she tried to keep her calm as the realization struck her like a physical blow and sent a wave of disorientation washing over her. It was nearly incomprehensible to her to learn that everything had been a deception and that he had remained alive the entire time after she had grieved him, carried the weight of his passing like an insurmountable load, and held herself responsible for his passing. She tried to speak, but her voice was stuck in her throat, suffocated by the intensity of her feelings, and her breath came in short, ragged gasps. She felt vulnerable and exposed as anger, betrayal, uncertainty, and a glimmer of desperate hope fought for control of her being. How did this occur? Why and by whom had this heinous deceit been planned? The answer slipped through her fingers like smoke, but her mind was racing, attempting to piece together the pieces of the past, looking for hints she might have missed. On the other side of her, Victor observed with a shrewd look, his face unreadable, his stance comfortable but clearly menacing. He had always been a man who enjoyed manipulation and control, and this time was no exception. He had foreseen Amy's astonishment and pain, knew exactly how she would respond, and had taken advantage of it. He stepped closer, his voice low and methodical, every syllable dripping with silent menace, the corners of his lips curling into a faint, evil smirk. He said, "You didn't really think it was over, did you?" as he fixed her with his unblinking gaze, seemingly daring her to turn away. The implication was obvious. Amy was still a piece in whatever perverse plan Victor had planned, and her newfound understanding had only made him hold her more tightly. Damien has always been a part of this game, and so have you. The difference is, I decide when it ends. She could see the icy resolve in his gaze, the implicit assurance that there would be dire repercussions if she ventured to disobey him. She tightened her fists at her sides, her nails pressing into her hands as she struggled to keep her balance, a wave of defiance piercing through the fog of her astonishment. She refused to be intimidated by him once more. Not with everything that had happened to her. She spit out, "You don't get to control me anymore," in a voice that was shaking but full of strength. The statement seemed bold, even irresponsible, but she refused to back down, her eyes fixed on Victor's with a fury he had never seen in her before. "If Damien is alive, then I'll find him. And there's nothing you can do to stop me." Something glowed in his eyes for a moment, maybe a flash of astonishment or even a glimmer of appreciation, but it vanished as swiftly as it had come, replaced by something more sinister and perilous. Victor's smile vanished as his face hardened into a far more menacing appearance. He moved closer to her, his presence hovering over her like a thundercloud as he made another step forward. "You always did have a rebellious streak," he thought in a surprisingly composed tone. The mention of Cain caused a new surge of horror to wash over her, causing her breath to catch in her throat. "But you forget who you're dealing with. Cross me, and you'll regret it. And so will Cain." Her buddy, her ally, and the one person who had supported her through it all was Cain. The threat was obvious, and Victor knew exactly where to hit her to cause the greatest harm. Cain would suffer if she pushed him too much. She felt stuck after coming to this revelation, caught between wanting to fight back and being afraid of what Victor may do to the people she loved. The idea of endangering Cain was intolerable. She had already lost so much. However, everything changed when it was shown that Damien was still alive. She couldn't simply leave and act as though she hadn't been told the truth. Her thoughts were racing, trying to find a way out, a route that wouldn't lead to additional suffering, but there weren't many possibilities, and none of them were risk-free. Detecting her internal conflict, Victor used his edge to his advantage, lowering his voice to a whisper with each word a well-placed jab. Amy was faced with an impossible choice as the ultimatum hung between them, heavy and suffocating. "You have a choice, Amy. Walk away now, forget what you've heard, and life can go back to normal. Or keep digging, and I promise you, the consequences will be far worse than anything you've faced before." However, as she gazed into Victor's emotionless, icy eyes, she was certain that this was not the end. By no means. When Cain entered the room, his face cautious, his eyes darting between them as though he sensed the tight atmosphere, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the tense silence, and both Amy and Victor glanced toward the door. Everything all right here? He said, his body stiff and his voice cautious, prepared to step in if needed. Amy opened her mouth to reply, but Victor spoke first, his voice fluid, returning to his normal calmness with ease. His smile reappeared but did not extend to his eyes. "Just a friendly conversation," he responded. "Nothing to worry about." Amy, however, was wiser. The game was far from over, the lines had been drawn, the threat had been made. Even though her mind was already racing with plans and the will to get the truth at any cost, she managed a modest, comforting smile as she met Kane's probing gaze. Damien was still alive. Victor had seriously underestimated her if he believed he could prevent her from discovering him. She would not back down this time, and the war had only just begun. Since that awful night, Amy had seldom slept, and each time she closed her eyes, the blood was visible. She couldn't shake the vision of the dead body, the white skin, and the icy silence. Before everything became motionless, she recalled how desperately Damien had gasped for air. He was gone, everyone had informed her. Kane had made a vow. With a mixture of surprise and remorse, Amanda had whispered it. Nate, with his medical knowledge, had even verified that there was no pulse. However, Amy was shocked by what she was witnessing as she stood in the center of Chancellor Park, her heart pounding and her hands shaking. Damien was standing across the lawn in a hooded coat by the fountain. Alive. Inhaling. The same penetrating eyes that had earlier made her feel both comfortable and afraid were watching her. She stopped. A few seconds later, she let out a scream that reverberated like a siren of treachery across the silent twilight. She yelled, "He's not dead," attracting the attention of a mother wheeling a stroller and a jogger nearby. Disbelief trembled in her voice. "Damien's alive," she said as she started to back away, tears welling up in her eyes and her heart racing. She briefly believed she was going insane. But as if to test the limits of the past and present, Damien approached her warily and purposefully. Amy spun around and sprinted, almost tripping over the path's edge. She took out her phone, dialed the first name that sprang to mind, Victor Newman, and her breath came in rapid rushes. When the call came in, Victor was in his Newman Enterprises office going over the security tape from the warehouse incident. For weeks, he had been surreptitiously looking into Kane Ashby because he was concerned of his unpredictable actions and his unexpected engagement with Amanda and the Dumas estate. All the disparate parts began to fit together as soon as he heard Amy's frantic voice on the other end of the line. Victor's jaw tensed as he said, "It's Amy. Damien is alive. I just saw him. He looked right at me." He got to his feet and narrowed his eyes while gazing out the window that overlooked Genoa City. He told her, "Stay where you are." The line died. "Don't talk to anyone. Don't go home. I'll send someone to get you." Victor summoned his personal security team right away and told them to find Amy and take her to the property. He picked up the phone again without hesitation and called Kane this time. "We need to talk. Now." Kane was at Society, watching Amanda from the other side of the room while enjoying a scotch, when his phone rang. He felt his stomach sink when he saw Victor's name. With a casual yet cautious tone, he went outside to answer the phone. "Victor. What can I do for you?" Kane knew this was not a social call because of the lethal stillness that followed the hesitation on the other end. "Don't play games with me, Ashby. Amy saw Damien. Alive. Walking around Genoa City. I warned you weeks ago not to test me. You should have listened." A sickening sensation rose in Kane's throat. Everything, including the cover-up, the partnership with Amanda, and even his final exchange with Lily, might fall apart if Damien were still alive. He swallowed forcefully, attempting to remain calm. With a low, sour laugh, Victor said, "I don't know what she thinks she saw, but Damien is dead. I watched him die. I don't care what you think you saw." What matters is what Amy saw, and she screamed it in public. Damien being alive could destroy more than just your pathetic web of lies. It could blow this entire town wide open. Kane was visibly frightened. He lowered his voice and moved away from the pair who were passing. Victor, you have to believe me. I didn't know. If he's alive, someone must have helped him. Maybe even staged the whole thing. Victor's voice was suddenly growling. Kane's fingers shook a little as he hung up the phone. If you're playing me, if you had anything to do with this deception, I swear on everything I own, you won't make it out of this town with your reputation or your freedom. He was aware that Victor was serious when he threatened. Additionally, he was aware that Victor Newman had the authority to literally and figuratively bury him. Meanwhile, a stone-faced, silent guard took Amy to the Newman ranch. Nikki offered her a drink of water as she entered the living room, trembling. Moments later, Victor came in, his face unreadable. He was seated across from her when he urged, "Tell me exactly what you saw, Damien by the fountain, the coat, the eyes," Amy repeated. With his fingers curled under his chin, Victor listened. Amy shook her head and asked, "Did he say anything?" "No. But he wasn't just walking around like someone who faked his death. He looked angry. Like he had unfinished business." Victor gave a hesitant nod. Amy lowered her voice and said, "He probably does." Victor didn't respond right away when asked, "Do you think Kane knew? Or Amanda?" He got up and moved in the direction of the fireplace. "If they did, they'll both pay for it. But first, we need to find Damien. And we need to do it before he finds anyone else." Amanda felt a sinking sensation in her chest across town. Her shoulders were tense, and she hadn't been able to get in touch with Kane for more than an hour. Nate's phone buzzed. She disregarded it. Then there was Amy on the other call. She gave a hesitant response. "He's alive," the whisper said. "Amy?" Amanda's face was bleeding profusely when she stood. Amanda's knees gave way and she sat down firmly on the couch. "What did you just say?" "Damien. He's alive. I saw him." I screamed in the middle of the park. Everyone heard. She had been so certain that the plan was perfect. She recalled the night, including Kane's icy face, the broken glass, and the smell of gasoline. Damien was meant to be deceased. Now, however, everything was unraveling. After hanging up, she contacted Kane, who eventually picked up. "Victor knows," the woman stated. Kane muttered curses to himself. Amanda paused before saying, "Amy saw him. We need to talk. Face to face." With a flat and unhumorous laugh, Kane asked, "What if it wasn't Damien? What if it was someone else? A twin? An imposter? This isn't a soap opera, Amanda. If Damien's alive, we're screwed." Kane visited the Dumas estate later that evening, which was deserted and reverberated with the ghosts of its former existence. There were still secrets there, the kind that changed faces but never died. He recalled the last time he had seen Damien's body as he strolled through the hallways. He recalled the weight of the silence that followed and the blood that gathered at the edge of the floors. Was everything a dream? A show? Was Damien able to stage his death in order to exact revenge? If so, who was his helper? Kane turned, uneasy, when he heard a sound above. However, nobody came out. Kane knew his time was running short as ghosts murmured through the mansion. Meanwhile, Victor had used all of his available resources. Private detectives were being sent out, security cameras were being inspected, and Amy was being closely monitored. He no longer trusted anyone, not even Nick, Adam, or Amanda. Every secret buried with Damien was vulnerable to revival if he were still alive. And that included Victor's own role in hiding parts of Damien's past, which Victor had made a concerted effort to conceal and which might have been related to Newman Enterprises. The city was ablaze with rumors by the end of the week. A hooded figure has been sighted outside Crimson Lights. Someone else claimed to have seen someone who fit Damien's description close to the graveyard. Sharon had questions. Billy sniffed around the estate of Dumas. On social media, Phyllis shared a mysterious message. Like a storm that was about to burst through the sky, tension was rising. Then the letter arrived, left on Victor's desk in an unlabeled envelope. It had a single photograph of Damien standing in front of the Newman Tower, still very much alive. The scribbled handwriting on the back reads, "You should have finished what you started." Victor's jaw was clenched as he crumpled the picture and gazed out the window. Nikki entered the room behind him. She questioned, "What are you going to do?" Victor slowly turned. At the same moment, Kane stood in front of his hotel room's mirror, gazing at the man he had become. "I'm going to find Damien. And I'm going to make damn sure this time, he stays dead." The blood, the treachery, the lies. It had all brought us to this point. And Kane knew there would be no escaping the consequences if Damien was really back. Not Victor's. Not from reality. Certainly not from Damien, either.